Hello and welcome to the Murders at Karlov Manor limited set review for the black cards. Today we are going to be talking about the black cards unlimited. That's the whole deal. If you have not been here before with us for one of my set reviews, these are the tiers I use. They're a little bit different maybe than some of the other things that other people use to grade cards in limited. I like them. They're simple. Tier 1 is good. Tier 5 is bad. There's a little bit more detail here on the screen if you haven't seen it before. And feel free to take a pause and look at it. But we're just going to get started with Agency Corner. 4 and a black for a 3/6 with 2 and a black to sacrifice a creature and draw a card. If the sacrificed creature was suspected, you draw 2 cards instead. So 5-mana 3/6, you don't see these very often because the stat line's okay. I don't think it's horrible, and I think this is like an okay-ish 5-drop, but you can kind of play it and it's probably fine. The reason I have it in tier 4 is that these type of cards where it's like really expensive and then it's expensive to get the sacrifice going tend to not be very good. They require a lot of you. And there's again, as I've talked about before, 5-drops are just not premium. Like there's just not a premium slot. And I think when you have a 5-drop, like 5-drops basically, tier 4 is your average 5-drop, tier 3 is your good 5-drop, and then like tier 2 is like your wow, like I'll actually play 4 of these in my deck 5-drop at common. The last example of like a tier 2 5-drop would be like Basilica Shepherd would be like a tier 2 5-drop, and that's kind of as high as they go at common. They really it's really rare for that just because of there's non-premium. There's not premium. It's like drafting a running back in the first round. You don't want to do it. Similarly, you don't want to draft 5-drops early. Better to draft your 2-drops. So that's why this card is sort of in tier 4. I think it's like fine. I think it's a playable 5, but I don't love it. Alley Assailant, 2 and a black for a 3/3, but enters the battlefield tapped, and you can disguise it for 4 black, and when it's turn face up, each target opponent loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life. So I really like this, actually. It may sort of like look on face value that like the disguise is really expensive. I actually don't think you're getting that bad of a deal. So there will be I think this is a very interesting card because you can either play it on turn 3 as a tapped 3/3, or you can disguise it on 3 as a 2/2 with word 2. And like some people are going to be like, well, why would you ever not disguise it? And you're supposed to disguise it 95% of the time, but there are some games I think where if some draws on the play, I think you're supposed to just play this on 3 as like Centaur Courser, and then just get in. I don't think that this is black Centaur Courser not super rare, like not super common, right? Black not known for getting cards like this, but I don't think you're supposed to do that most of the time because the drain for 3, for like 6 mana, flip up your guy, drain you for 3, like that's like a lot. That is a lot of like life swing happening. Now it is I will acknowledge the expensiveness of this card. However, I think it's fine. I think it's a solid card. I don't know how many of these you can actually play is my concern. Like how many can you actually play? I don't know. This does have the issue of it sort of conflicts with your disguise stuff. And you're not super happy about doing this on like turn 6. But a lot of times you're like, I guess the issue with this card could have is that there's going to be a lot of stuff to do with your mana in this format. This is going to be a very like mana intensive format because there's going to be all these disguised creatures you can flip that are more expensive. There's going to be there's investigate to draw cards. There's I don't think you're going to run out of things to do with your mana. So that is kind of a concern that maybe this card doesn't quite get there because it's 6 mana. It's just you have other stuff to do that's more efficient or better. But I think training your opponent for 3 is pretty good. So I've put it into tier 3. Barbed Servitor. 3 and a black for a 1/1 indestructible. When it enters the battlefield, suspect it. When it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and lose 1 life. And when it does ult damage, target opponent loses that much life. So kind of the joke with this guy is, if you can find a way to unsuspect it, it's going to be a nightmare for your opponent. But it is also a 4-mana 1/1. So, there are ways to unsuspect it. There are but they're yeah. And you know you play it, and that's why it's not in tier five. I could have put it in tier five because it's a 4 mana 1/1 that can't block when it DTBs, so you just take like 8 million damage. But it is like if you manage to unsuspect it, it's super annoying. Like it is really annoying for your opponent to deal with if you can unsuspect it. But then you kind of have to leave it on blocks. Like then it's like, oh, I'm leaving my 4 mana 1/1 on blocks and not attacking with it. So I don't know. I don't love this card, but I think it's I think there could be like a niche home for it somewhere. Basilica Stalker. 5 and a black for a 3/4 flying. It has disguise for 4 and a black, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you gain 1 life and surveil 1. So you'll note that this card was printed in the same set as the white 5 mana, the 6 mana 4/3 flyer. That is just a 4/3 flyer. I don't know why this one is so much better. I really just could not tell you why they printed a card with arguably a better stat line. Or you could argue it's better. I generally 3/4 on a flyer is better than a 4/3 because it doesn't die to like bolts and stuff. And there's no the deal threes don't kill it basically. And this one like in that especially on the flyer that in this case is going to generate some value when it attacks. Like I like this card. I think this is decent. Again, this is sort of like this is your 5. This is a 5 drop that I'm more happy about. It's expensive, but this one you do have the buyout on 3, and you're probably going to be flipping this on 5 and hitting your opponent a decent percentage of the time. That's good. That's a good thing to do. Also get stuff in your graveyard, Surveil's good, Surveil's nice, you gain 1 life. I don't know why you gain 1 life. Like, was the card not good enough with like just Surveil? I don't get it. Also, it's very funnily templated because the Surveil and then there's the 1 on the left side of the card. Yeah, alright, let's on to the main stuff. Case of the Gorgon's Kiss, single black mana for a case. When it enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target creature that was dealt damage this turn. Solve. 3 or more creatures were put into the graveyard from anywhere this turn. It is solved. It turns into a 4/4 with Death Touch and Lifelink. So this actually, I might be shooting too low on my hot. Like when I first saw this card, I was like, we've seen like, it's a deal damage to the thing that died. It's horrible. But then I was like, no. This is a 4/4 because the way this kind of plays out, I think, so the turn you play it, you have attacked like your 1/1 into their 2/2, and you have traded off 2 creatures, and 2 creatures have been put into the graveyard from anywhere this turn already. So all you need to do on the turn that you play this card is get 1 more card into a graveyard somehow, a creature card, and then you just get a 4/4 Death Touch Lifelink for 1 mana, which just seems absolutely cracked. Like this card, I think this card just seems pretty close to just cracked to me. Like maybe tier 2 is even undershooting it. The only issue is the destroy up to 1 target creature that was dealt damage this turn text, because that text is usually really bad, really bad. However, what it is getting you is so good in this case that I think this card's just amazing. And even if you don't solve it the turn you play it, like even if it's like, I only killed 2 things, at some point during the game there may be like a big attack turn or something, and you mill, maybe a mill 3, you hit 3 creatures, something like that. It's just it may happen. It may very well happen. I think this card is just great. Basically, is kind of how I feel about it. Case of the Stashed Skeletons. 1 and a black for a case. When it enters the battlefield, create a 2/1 black skeleton and suspect it. To solve this case, you control no suspected skeletons, and when it is solved, you have a Demonic Tutor on the battlefield. So Demonic Tutor is not very good in Limited as a card by itself, because the cards in your deck generally aren't worth tutoring. Now, when a Demonic Tutor is literally free, when it is attached to a card that makes something on the battlefield, and then later in the game, like the problem with Demonic Tutor is you draw it in your opening hand, and it's like, well, this is terrible because I don't want to play it on turn 2. Like, well, you have to like play it on 2 because you need to spend your mana because like you're gonna lose. Don't spend the mana, but you don't really know what you want to get, and then whatever. This solves that problem because it's a 2-drop that is also on like turn 6. You're like, well, my skeleton died, and now let's go get whatever the best card in my deck is for this matchup. It just seems super solid to me. I really like this card. Yeah, I've put it into tier 1. I think it's really good. Cerebral Confiscation, 2 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards, or target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. So yeah, this doesn't really... The issue with Mind Rots is like, what if I draw them and my opponent doesn't have anything left? The issue with Mind Rots was not, oh man, I was really worried about them having the best threat instead of 2 of the cards in their hand. Generally, like I genuinely believe that you should literally never, ever, ever cast the second mode on this card in Limited. Unless it's best of 3 and you know they have like 2 really absurd rares. And it's like on turn 3, like if you've somehow seen their hand and you know that their hand consists, like, yeah, whatever. The second mode on this card is basically, my point is the second mode on this card is not helping. It is not helping this card. It is not adding any versatility to Mind Rot. It's not good enough. Clandestine Meddler, 2 and a black for a 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, suspect up to 1 other target creature you control, and whenever 1 or more suspected creatures you control attacks, surveil 1. Really nice. Requires you to have 2 drops. It is one of the issues with this card is that it is a 3-drop in a set that has infinite 3-drops, and 3-drops are not a priority, and it has 2 toughness as 3-drop. All of that granted, being able to suspect 1 of your creatures is really nice. One of the it goes both ways, right? This card is a 3-drop. You don't necessarily always want to play it on 3. That's nice. You have all these disguised creatures you can play instead. Great. So, that's good. That actually like maybe gives it a little bit more breathing room. If you have a 2-drop you want to suspect, and you will suspect literally anything on 2 if you can, this card's good. It's gonna get you through some damage. You're gonna get to surveil 1. If you have other suspected creatures already, cool. Surveil's really good. So. This card's put it into tier 2. I like it. I like it quite a bit. It does need a little bit of help, but I like it. Deadly Cover Up. 3 black for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may collect evidence 6. Destroy all creatures if evidence was collected. Exile a card from an opponent's graveyard, and then search its owner's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards, and then they may exile that place. That doesn't matter. Technically, you can collect evidence if you know they have a, but don't. You probably shouldn't be collecting evidence on this card. Is kind of the point. It does the whatever. But I don't know do we have a name for that? If this effect is there a colloquial name for the exile a thing and then exile all the copies of it? I don't know. Stone Brain. Sure. Yeah, I mean this is your typical. I mean it's 5 mana Wrath. It does not. It unlike the white one, does not give your opponent value back, which is probably generally better. This is probably I would guess this is probably a better card than the white Wrath, although it is 1 more mana. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not a big Wrath enjoyer, especially Wraths that don't do stuff. So I think I sort of just put any Wrath that doesn't impact the board in any way into tier 3, and that's where it goes. Extracted Confession. 1 and a black for a sorcery. At additional cost to cast this spell, you may collect evidence 6. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. If evidence was collected instead, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. Yeah, I like this. So, it generally the greatest power creature is what you want to get rid of. Even if it's not necessarily what you want to get rid of, you're probably getting rid of something pretty good if you're collecting evidence. There isn't an enormous. I mean, there's some token against white decks. This is probably gonna have a hard time. You're gonna be in for a bit of a bad time against white decks with this card. But yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. I really don't hate it. But I don't love it either. So I've put it into tier 3. I think this is. Do I think this is going to be better or worse than Tithing Blade was? Tithing Blade I would have rated as a tier 3 card by the end of the format. And I would put this, so I think it's basically going to be about the same. Vesture Leech. Single black mana for a 1/1. When it deals combat damage to a player, you mill 2 cards. No May on that one. 1 and a black, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Activate only once each turn. So it does have a threat of activation. It's nice. So on turn 1, this card's really good. You're going to get to mill 6 cards, something like 5 or 6 cards. Because this is going to get to attack on turn 2, and then it's maybe going to get to attack on turn 3. And, yeah, I mean, the Leech, it seems fine. It maybe is a little low impact in the mid to late game, and I have concerns about it in that regard. But getting to mill 2 is nice, and there's ways to you can suspect it and other stuff. Just having stuff on the board early that you can suspect and do stuff with in black, I think is pretty important. So I think I like this one. Homicide Investigator. 1 and a black for a 2/2. When one or more non-token creatures you control die, investigate. This ability triggers only once each turn. So this is kind of like Morbid Opportunist, but it's a 2-drop, and 2-drops are inherently more valuable. The effect is obviously slightly worse. It's not drawing a card, and it's also not triggering on your opponent's stuff, but who cares? It's still really, really good, and it also counts itself. So obviously when your opponent kills it, it's a 2-for-1 for you. You've 2-for-1 them, and they will be unhappy about it. So really good. Hunted Bone Brute. 2 and a black for a 6/2 menace. When it enters the battlefield, you create. Target opponent creates 2/1/1 white dog creature tokens, and when it dies, each opponent loses 3 life. So you're never casting this, right? You're always just going to play it as a 2/2, and then on turn 4, you flip it up and attack. Now this is kind of a house because you're attacking with a 6/2 menace on 4. Whew, that is a house. That's a lot of damage. That is a lot of damage. And if you're a commander player, you can have your friend get 2 dog tokens on 3. I don't know. I think that's why that line of text exists. So I put this into tier 2 instead of tier 1, despite the fact that it's attacking a 6-power menacer on turn 4, because it has 2 toughness, and any removal spell at all kills it. So that but it does have to get removed, and it is a good card. You're going to be taking this back on pick 1 a lot. It's going to be good. Maybe I should just put it in tier 1, but I don't know. It has the 2 toughness concern does concern me. Illicit Masquerade. 3 and a black for an enchantment with flash. When it enters the battlefield, put an imposter counter on each creature you control. Whenever a creature you control with an imposter counter on it dies, exile it, return up to 1 other target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it's just a weird effect. Basically, to have this card be functional, you need to have a bunch of creatures in your graveyard and a bunch of creatures on the battlefield, and your opponent needs to wrath you. It's not. It's just way too janky. It's not a limited card. 4 mana doesn't impact the board. That's the end of the story. It doesn't add up. 3 black for an instant. Return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield and suspect it. So it is an instant speed reanimation spell. However, it is also suspecting your creature, which in some cases is very good. However, this is not Defossilize. So Defossilize, much better card than this for several reasons. One of the reasons is that Defossilize was single pipped. This is double pipped. On 5 mana, it doesn't matter as much, but it still does. It does come up. And the casting cost not necessarily the easiest thing ever. Secondarily, your creature not being able to block that you get back from your graveyard is probably more bad than it is good in most cases. There is 1 land cycler in this format. The land cyclers actually were a big contributor to why Defossilize was so good, in my opinion, in LCI. I think the land cyclers really helped that card out, because you could land cycle on turn 3 or turn 2 early in the game, and then on turn 5 you'd 5 mana Defossilize your land cycler back, and it was just an enormous blowout because you 8 for 1 to them. So yeah, I think this card's fine, but I do not think this card's fine. I think this card is mostly bad, and this is generally where you start the reanimates. I put Defossilize down here too. I wasn't familiar with its game, but until we see multiple formats in a row where they're okay, we get the reanimator thing right, I'm just not gonna buy it. Lead Pipe. Single black mana for a clue equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. When an equipped creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and you can pay 2 to sacrifice the lead pipe to draw a card, and it's equipped for 2. I like this one. I think this is my favorite of the clue equipments. I like the wrench too, but I think this one is my favorite because +2/+0, and then when it trades off, your opponent loses 1 life. That's pretty good. It's sneaky, right? You're that's 1 life. It's not that bad. It's it's not nothing. It's not 0 life, and +2/+0 equipped for 2. It's a pretty bad deal, but it's not horrific. And this is an artifact which does have some synergies, not necessarily in black, but I don't hate it. Leering Onlooker. 1 and a black for a 1/3 flying. When You can pay 2 black to exile it from your graveyard, and you create 2 tapped 1/1 black back creature tokens with flying. So 2 mana 1/3 flyer. It's not great, but you know, I mean, it would probably be by itself a tier 4 card. You probably could play it. It wouldn't be like the worst thing ever. And you will play this on 2, and especially again in this format, having stuff to do on 2 mana is so important. 2 mana things in this format are even more important than they usually are. I cannot stress this point enough with this format specifically. However, this card, like, you don't, what you really want to do with this card is mill it. That's what you want to do. You want to put this card in your yard somehow. You want to discard it. You want to mill it. Whatever. You want to get free value off of getting it in your graveyard, and then it makes 2 1/1 flyers for 4 mana. Not bad. And yeah, it's a really strong card. Takes a little bit of work to like enable it, but I like it. Long goodbye. 1 and a black for an instant. Spell can't be countered. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. So yeah, this is your classic, you know, black removal spell. It's good, solid. It's not tier 1 because it's 1-for-1 removal. That I don't think is actually even, you know, I mean, it's gonna be good but not great. That's you know, you're gonna pick it somewhat early. You're gonna play it. You're gonna be happy about it, but you know, nothing fancy. Macabre Reconstruction. 3 and a black for a sorcery. Spell costs 2 less to cast if a creature was put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, and you can return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. So, this being a sorcery is really tough, right? Because, if they printed this at 2 mana, how would I feel about it? I wouldn't feel that great about it. Because we just saw Another Chance in LCI, and that card, part of the reason that card was really good is because it was an enabler for itself. You get to mill 2 cards and put like maybe a creature you wanted to get back in your graveyard, and maybe you didn't always hit something you wanted to get back, but that's fine because there was already stuff you could get back. That was also an instant, so you could like hold it up and do other stuff, and then if you wanted to, you could get your stuff back. Again, the land cyclers also made that card like kind of good, like for nice late game value targets to get off of it. This card doesn't really have a lot of that stuff going on. You can't, if you find a way to like get something into your graveyard and then cast this on the same turn as a sorcery, it's probably okay, but I'm just not thrilled. I'm just not, these type of effects tend to generally be a little too slow, but maybe this one there's just enough ways to get stuff into your yard that this works, but we'll have to see. Massacre Girl, known killer, 2 black for a 4/3 menace. Creatures you control have Wither, and whenever a creature your opponent controls dies, if its toughness was less than 1, draw a card. So there is a -X spell. I don't know. There's also there's 2 uncommons that are minus stuff with this card. I don't believe there's any commons that are minus. But yeah, this enables itself too, right? Obviously, I mean, make sure creatures do that. But yeah, just a 4 mana 4/4 menace that, you know, when it attacks, I've loosened up my own. I think I was debating between tier 1 and tier 2 with this card, but I mean, just, you know, this card is just so annoying. Like, you play it on 4, and your opponent's just like, come on, man. Like, this, again, is this card gonna win 60? Is this card gonna have a 60% game in hand win rate on 17 lands? That's kind of my criteria for tier 1. I think this card is gonna get there. So, yeah. Murder. 1 black for an instant, destroy target creature. Put it in tier 3 out of respect. I think it might actually be tier 4, but I put it in tier 3 out of respect. I think it's fine. I don't think it's great. Obviously, the word stuff makes it really bad, but the fact that you're getting to kill their thing once they flip it is pretty good. It's fine. It's going to be overdrafted. I'm probably never going to get... I think in Streets of New Capenna, which was the last time they printed Murder, I drafted it like 3 times total. Now, that was partially because black was not a great color in that format. Brokers broke and all that. But yeah, it's fine. It's playable, but nothing special. Night Drinker, more. You know what? I give up. 3 and a black for a 4/2 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you lose 3 life. And you can disguise it for black. So you will be disguising it because paying 3 life to make your thing is not good. But you know, disguising it for 2 mana is really good. You get to, there's double pipped on the disguise. It's real. Like we've talked about how that is a real cost. However, a good card. You're getting a big flyer, hasty flyer on turn 4 that's like turn 4 is going to be a really key turn in this format because it's like who's disguised creatures getting flipped up, like what is it doing? It's going to be a pretty big game. Turn 4 is going to be pretty important, and this is going to put you in a good position on turn 4. It is not a 2-for-1, which is why it is staying in tier 3 though. I think it's fine, but I think there may or may not be more flexible options out there. Outrageous Robbery. X black for an instant. Target opponent exiles the top X cards of their library face down. You may look at and play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. If you cast the spell this way, you may pay mana of any color. Spend mana as though or mana of any color to cast it. So basically, it's an X black draw X cards from your opponent's deck card. Yeah, I mean that's okay. If you want like big card advantage engines, you can play this, but I don't think that you're generally going to want that. I think for me personally, I am happier about my cards, just being more flexible. This is not a flexible card. It doesn't do anything until you have like 4 mana. Like, when you think about it like this, 3 mana to draw a card, horrible rate. 4 mana to draw 2 cards, horrible rate. 5 mana to draw 3 cards, okay rate. 6 mana to draw 4 cards is a pretty good rate. So you kind of, that's kind of the level of cost that you need to be getting to. I think there's just better stuff out there, but there's going to be better ways to spend your mana, but this is, if you're a control player and you like playing control decks, and you like having a card that just draws like a million cards and then you win, like, great, this will do that for you. Persuasive Interrogator is 4 black for a 5/6. When it enters the battlefield, investigate, and whenever you sacrifice a clue, target opponent gets 2 poison counters. I want to note that I'm basically ignoring the second line of text. I think that there may, in some cases, be a time that it comes up, but I think for the most part, this is a 6 mana 5/6 that investigates, and I basically put that at tier 3. That's how good I think investigating is. That it's not 6 mana 5/6 is pretty big. Even like a 6 mana like it's not a small creature, and you are investigating. You're getting a 2-for-1 out of the deal, and it's just large. It's just a large creature, and that's how I feel about it. Polygraph Orb. 4 and a black for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. You lose 2 life. You can pay 2 and tap it to collect evidence 3. Each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard a card or sacrifice a creature. I put this into tier 5. It's a little bit of it's a strong take. It's a strong take for me. I'm not going to deny that. I thought about moving it up. The problem I have with this card is that the rate that you're paying on the front side of it is so atrocious that the fact that you get to make your opponent do the Croxa effect every turn for the rest of the game, you really got to be in a good spot to play this card, because you are losing 2 life and not impacting the board for 5 mana. That is not only a nothing, that is actively hurting you. And as a result, I have put this into tier 5. Now, one of the things that scares me about my grade and why I think I might be wrong is this has the look to me of a card that they tried at 4 mana and then they said that's too good, and they bumped it up to 5. Now, I don't know if that's actually, this is whenever I see a card that looks kind of like this, or it's ooh, I wonder if they tried it it just looks like it's way too expensive. I'm I wonder if they tried it at a lower mana value and it was too good and they had to bump it up. So that's maybe a concern I have for my own, grading integrity. But I would say that these type of effects, you're going to have ways to draw cards. You're just going to have them. This format's got tons of them, so I think this card is not super great. Presumed Dead. 1 black for an instant, target creature gets... Until another turn, when a target creature gets +2/+0, whenever this creature dies, return to the battlefield under your opponent's control suspended. I should put this in tier 4, but these type of cards are never good, especially when they're 2 mana. They're just too expensive. They just are too situational. Sometimes your thing doesn't die and it just gets removed. Sometimes, your opponent doesn't attack. Sometimes they don't block the right way. Sometimes you get blown out. Don't love it. Repeat Offender, 1 and a black for 2/1. You can pay 2 and a black if it's suspected. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. Otherwise suspected. So I originally had this in tier 5, and I should probably go put it back to tier 5. The reason I moved it up is I was it's a 2 mana spell. I didn't. Some of the blue cards, I was like, illegal to play on turn 2, and this is illegal to play on turn 2. It is literally like they will come to your house and arrest you if you play this on turn 2. Like it's actually that bad. So, I mean, actually, this one's not as illegal because it does have like late game effects, but it's 2 mana 2. It is a 2 mana 2/1. It is a 2/1 for 2 mana. All right, I've convinced myself to put it back into tier 5. Hold on. My argument was so convincing I had to move it back down to tier 5. Anyways, I don't think this card's very good. It's just the rate is so bad, and like paying 3 to like put a counter on, even if it was like, oh, pay 3 to put a +1/+1 counter on this, it's like that's not a good deal. Paying 3 to suspect it might actually be a better deal. Like that might actually be okay. Like that might be the part that's like decent, and you're never activating the +1/+1 counter ability. So yeah, I'm not a big fan. Rot Farm Mortipede. 3 and a black for a 3/4. When one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, it gets +1/+1 and gains menace and lifelink until end of turn. I like this one quite a bit. I do like it. I think it's solid. Your deck does need to be enabling it. You need to be collecting evidence. You need to have cards that collect evidence. There are other ways to have stuff leave your graveyard too that that come up. I promise they're just throughout the set, but collect evidence is the main one, and this is just doesn't block super. It blocks okay. Like on turn 4, this blocks okay. Like it can block their 2/2. It can block, all that stuff. It can do that. But most of the time it's just going to be on the attack, and you're going to gain 4 life with a Menacer. Like it's a big game. That's a lot of life. That's a house if you can, and you're gonna like collect evidence is everywhere. Like it's on all of these different cards, and like you're gonna be able to do it. So this is solid. Maybe not repeatably. Maybe not super repeatable. You have to be a little bit careful. One of the things I really do like about this type of effect is like it really makes you think about how you want to exile stuff from your graveyard. Like it's really like a really cool little like puzzle there as a design note. Slice from the Shadows. X and a black for an instant spell can't be countered. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. We have seen this type of removal before. It is going to be decent in this set because on turn 3 it will remove your opponent's suspected creature, and that's kind of the best case scenario for this. It doesn't really get any better than that. Because X in a color for -X/-X is not a good card, generally. So I put it into tier 3 because it can't be countered and it interacts favorably with the board on turn 3. So that's where that's where it belongs. Slimy Dual Leech. 3 and a black for a 2/4. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control with power 2 or less gets +1/+0 and gains that until end of turn. So this plays nicely, right? On turn 4, you're basically always going to have a 2/2 if you want to attack with a 2/2 that has Death Touch. And then as the game progresses, it just makes really annoying attacks every turn for your opponent. Like your opponent's like, well, do I really want to block this thing? It's like, no, I really don't. And that's just going to keep hitting them, and then this thing can also make itself have bigger and have Death Touch. I think it's solid. I like it. I like it quite a bit. So yeah. Snarling Gorehound. Single black mana for a 1/1 menace. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, surveil 1. I think this card would straight up be better if it just said ETB surveil 1. I do think that. Because yeah, your 2-drop's gonna surveil 1. Yeah, it is. But in like the mid to late game, you're gonna just draw this and you have to play it, and it's just gonna be like, man, it's playing a 1/1 menace. It just doesn't do anything. This would be better too if instead of menace it was just suspected. Like if instead of having menace it was just a suspected card. I think that would maybe be better too. So for those reasons, I'm kind of down on this card. I'm not a huge fan. I think it is maybe okay, but I'm just not seeing it. I'm just not quite seeing it with this one. Soul Enervation, 3 and a black for an enchantment with flash. When it enters the battlefield, target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. There are a lot of incidental drain effects in black in this format. So black is going to be gaining a lot of life, and you're going to be losing a lot of life. But yeah, this card just seems like an absolute house to me. So 4 mana for flash enchantment that gives something -4/-4. Not the best deal ever, right? 4 mana -4/-4, not the best, but certainly not the worst either. It's going to kill something on curve, great. you're probably pretty happy about it. Um, and then, when stuff leaves your graveyard, you're gonna drain your opponent for 1, and that's pretty good. That's like pretty good to have on your removal spell, Now, the inefficiency of the removal has bumped it down. It is not in tier 1 because the removal itself is inefficient. But with that being said, I do think it's pretty good. I think it's a pretty solid card, and you're gonna be happy about it. Toxin Analysis. Single black mana for an instant target creature gets Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. Investigate. What a house. This card is a house. Now, the real question is it better or worse than Shelob's Ambush from Lord of the Rings? And that's a great question, because I don't know the answer to that. And Shelob's Ambush, got underrated in that format, as all combat tricks tend to. Shelob's Ambush got underrated in that format. I think Shelob's Ambush actually, black was the best color, but Shelob's Ambush, it was up. It was, I think, a top 5 black common, which in that format is not. It went it was Crabane and Claim the Precious and Torment of Golem. I think would be my top 3. Try to think if there's anything else. I think I would put Shelob's Ambush at 4. I think that's where I'd put it. It's up. It really was up there. And this card is that card. And the question is it better? I would say that in a lot of cases, this is going to be better. Yeah, and I would say this is going to just be better in a lot of cases. And as a result, I think this is just an excellent card. Undercity Eliminator. 3 black for a 3/3. It enters the battlefield. You may sacrifice an artifact or a creature. When you do, exile target creature an opponent controls. That was a nice little removal effect thing. It, sacrifice a thing or exile a thing. Pretty simple. It is not a 2-for-1, but if you have investigate tokens lying around, which you're probably going to, and whatever, if you have other artifacts or small creatures, if you have the guy that makes your opponent discard a card, which we'll get to in a minute, and you sacrifice that to exile a thing. It's just pretty solid. It's a good card. It is 5 mana. 5 mana is a lot of mana. But, that's keeping it at a tier 1, but it's a good card. Unscrupulous Agent. 1 and a black for a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent exiles a card from their hand. We just had this in the last set. It actually underperformed pretty badly in LCI, because LCI was a format that was especially inhospitable to a 2-mana 1/1. A 2-mana 1/1, there were not, again, so this format is going to have a similar problem where if there aren't any, if a 3/1 stat line on turn 2 is not super common, a 2-mana 1/1 gets a lot worse. And this format also does not have a lot of 3/1s. Now it has some 2-mana 2/1s. It has more, they've toned down to 2-mana 2/1s in this set, and so maybe it blocks those well. But I think this card's gonna be better in this format. Generally, it's tier 2 or 3. Generally, it's a solid card. You can play them. They're good. There's more sacrifice themes going on in black in this format, so I expect it to be better. Solid card. And the final black card, which is Vayne Ripper. 3 black for a 6/5 flying with ward. Sacrifice a creature. Whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So, your opponent, bare minimum, is going to lose 4, and you are going to gain 4 when you play this card. Because they have to pay the ward, and this will die. Or I guess maybe they could exile it. Either way, bare minimum, they're losing 2. And they have to sacrifice a creature. So this card's just a house. It's just excellent. Triple black is a cost, but you should be able to cast it. We saw Gruff Triplets, whatever. This card's going to be great. It's going to be excellent. It's going to be one of Belak's best cards. Cool art, also. And that's it. That's the end. That's the end of my Black Limited Set review. We speed ran it a little bit compared to the other ones. And I hope you enjoyed. If you did, stick around. There's going to be more to come for LCI. See you next time.